Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Honest Business Podcast. Oh my goodness, we are well into halfway through the year. It is now the middle of July as I'm recording this, and things are getting exciting because Q4 is around the corner, and some of you will be like, what on earth are you talking about? Like, why are you even thinking that far ahead? However, lots of businesses are now fully in, like, right, Q4 is coming up, 2024 is coming up, what do we need to do for the rest of the year? And today, I think this episode might help you because we're going to do a Q&A. And you seem to love a Q&A, which is good with me. I think Q&A is always a fun one. And this specifically today is questions I've collated around sales and offer development. So what I mean by offer development, I mean sort of like your services that you're offering, something that you're proposing, maybe it's a new offer, things in your business that you're going to sell essentially, and how you package them and how you create them. And I've got 5 questions from across different platforms. Like someone messaged me on Instagram. One is that a client had come up with. Like there's a few sort of different areas that these questions have come from, but they're all very relevant, I imagine, in your business. Some of them you will be kind of like, oh yeah, I needed to know that. And others you will be like, in the past I've really struggled with that. So I'm going to dive in. We've got 5 and I will try and keep it as short and sweet as possible. However, I hope you're very well. Please share on social media if you've enjoyed this episode. I know we haven't got into it yet, but I love when you guys share or say hi or like, I've listened to this episode, it was really good. You know, I'm a human being. I love to talk with you. I love to hear from you. I love the kind of conversation that we can have following a podcast episode. So, number 1 is a juicy one off the bat. So, number 1 is, should I offer credits from people buying something else on an offer? Now, let me explain what they mean by that. So, they mean, and this is quite, if you've got an online business, this will maybe make more sense. And if you don't, this might be something that you've actually thought about anyway doing. So, what I mean by that is, if someone buys a service from you and then chooses to buy another service from you following that first initial service, e.g., for example, I don't know, they come and have, they spend an hour with you as like initial service that you have, which is kind of like a semi-low cost offer. And then they come and buy from you your high ticket offer, which is something, I don't know, like a one-on-one package with you or somewhere that they can work closely with you. There is always a question for many people that comes up around, should you then use the money that they have sort of made in that first investment, and should they then credit that towards paying for this higher investment that they've made, and therefore you're kind of like subsidizing some of the invoice because of the money they've already paid to that. And this is quite popular. Many people do it. Many people like it. A lot of people wonder, should they do it? And here's my thoughts around it. And again, this is just my thoughts. You do what you want to do, but you're kind of here because you want my opinion. So I'm going to give you it, okay? As an overall rule, I'm not a fan of this. I don't love it. I don't love people crediting things from different places. However, that's not to say that I wouldn't do it, and it's not to say that you should never do it. My issue with it becomes that people can just kind of use it and band it around, and it becomes, profitability in your business becomes sort of unknown, and it becomes this thing where there's not a kind of a lot of tracked data around it, and people don't fully understand what the impact is of them crediting things left, right, and centre. I also find that sometimes, and not always, it can discredit what it is that you're offering in the first place. And also people find it as almost like, sometimes people who offer this, again, not always, are people who are not confident in their high ticket offer. People who are not confident in selling the whole item that they've got and selling it for the full price that it is. And so often I deter people away from doing this because I'm like, you need to sell it at the price that it's at, flat out of the gate, even if someone's bought some things from you before. Now, I have clients in my business who buy sort of everything that I have, and they buy, you know, lots of different things over various years, some of them in a short period of time, some of them over a long period of time. And currently, as of today, we don't credit anything into the business for them to kind of like use that on other things. I think where this does work, and if you are wanting to do this, I think it works better on semi-passive or passive offers versus you trading your time. So what I mean by that is, if you have something like a course, or you have something like a masterclass, or you have some sort of like group program, even if you want to, although I'm really not sort of over the moon and love the idea of that. But if you have something where it's a one-to-many style offering, I can understand and therefore somewhat bargain with the idea of doing it. What I struggle with is when it's your one-on-one time, and most people use this in one-on-one. So someone will come and do an intensive, as we described, and then they'll be like, oh, well, that was sort of £500 or £1,000 or £200. And then they're like, yeah, you can put that money towards something else. And personally, I just don't see the point in it. I do see the point. I understand the strategy behind it. I'm just suggesting that you don't maybe do it. And just to explain the strategy for anyone who's wondering, the idea is that it's enticing for people. You can put it on the sales page and you can say, hey, look, if you do this and you decide that you want to continue working with me, then, you know, we'll credit that towards it. And people feel like they're getting a free service, right? They think it's great. They love it. And I can totally see from a consumer perspective why it's appealing. And some people love it, right? So if you are someone who, you know, wants to just get more sales in, you want to do this, like, yeah, sure, maybe you could do it. I just argue it's not a long-term sustainable option. Some people have it in their business and it is sustainable for them, and they have built their whole business model and their revenue model around having certain things incorporated into it, such as this. But I would say for the majority of people, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when I often find that people who are really kind of, they want to do this credit thing, often it's because it's kind of like they want to try and, they're kind of worried about finding more business, essentially what I'm going to say. I'll just say it brutally. They don't want to go and find more leads. And so they're like, okay, well, this person does this thing and then we'll keep them, and how do we get the average spend up, and how do we get all of this, like how can we get them to spend more and more money? Now, I'm not against that, right? I love that. That's how my business model runs to some degree. Like, people stay with me for a while and they buy lots of things. However, this idea of, oh, well, you know, I can't fill this offer and this offer, or I have to then fill it with loads of different people, but if I just get one person who runs through it all, then it's much easier. Like, I think it's a bit lazy behaviour, and I think it's a bit of a cop-out, because it often means that there's a lot of underlying shit that you need to deal with. And this is something I would say again. People who want to do this credit thing, I often find, again, not always, but I often find it's people who've got a lot of other stuff that they need to deal with, where the symptom and the kind of thing that they don't recognise but I can see is that they start finding solutions to problems that aren't actually problems, i.e. this offer and credit thing. And then they kind of, and I'm the one that'll come in and say, hang on a minute, that's not actually the problem. The problem is kind of 3 or 4 steps down the road. And that's kind of where things get a bit tricky and a bit kind of difficult, because it depends whether someone wants to do the work or not, right? It depends whether someone wants to go and unravel that, or whether they just want to kind of band-aid strategy, piece it all together. So I know that question is going to be like, oh, well, that was really helpful, mate, because you haven't really answered that. But this is a really nuanced piece, and actually a lot of these questions are also going to be, because it depends on your business model. And this is why I really struggle when people create content, or they create, you know, courses and things, and they're like, this is what you have to do, because that's not true, right? You don't have to do anything, and your business can be created in a way that fits for whatever you want. So some people come to me and they say, right, mate, I do want to offer credits because of whatever, something that they value in their business, somehow they want to run their business. They will come to me and say, look, I want to include this where that money gets credited towards their next membership, you know, the next year in the membership, or they get to do something else. And that's cool. I can then build a revenue model and I can help them build their business, and we can create a set of services that works for. But I think what I'm trying to suggest to you here is intentionality is key as always. And you really get into grips with, why am I doing that? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Why am I doing this? Why do I want to do it? And why am I doing this? Because often that answer, and I ask people that on a call, and they're like, yeah, I don't know why. Or it's because I'm worried about this. Or because I thought I had to. Or because I've seen so-and-so do it. Like, that's where you've really got to be careful, and you've really got to have I would say you need an expert opinion on, right, well, how are you going to make that work, and what does that mean for the longer term of your business? The other thing I would say about credit and things in business is many people who offer credits in business, in terms of them wanting to get people to move from one thing to the other, then want people to, they want to build a kind of retained model in their business to some degree, where clients stay for years and years and years and they re-sign. I argue that then you're setting yourself up for a whole load of potential weirdness, because you're starting to create a culture to some degree, and some people will argue that it doesn't, where people expect it. And so you have to be very careful, because I would say a decision like that will affect your business for sort of 2, 3, 4 years. Yes, obviously you can unravel it. Yes, you can change it. But you definitely need to be aware that that is not something you just randomly wake up one day, listen to a podcast and say, yep, I'm going to do that. Because I would say that needs some severe thinking about, and some real in-depth understanding of, if I do that now, what does that mean for my revenue and my profitability in sort of 5 years' time? And this is where most people don't think that far. That's why you're listening to this podcast. So all is well in the world. Let's move on to question 2. So number 2 is, how do I know if I have too many offers available for people to buy? This is an absolute jackpot question. I think it's fabulous. I smiled when I saw this question. I was like, yes, what a great question to riff on and to have a conversation about. So most people do have too many offers. I'm just going to put that out as a blanket statement. A lot of people have too many offers. Obviously, just a preference again. There's no right or wrong. You can have a million offers and you could have an amazing business. You can have one offer. You do what you want. It's your business. However, a lot of the time, there are too many offers going on. People don't know what to buy. People are thinking they're buying one thing and they're actually getting another. Often the issue becomes, and I'll just be clear on this, if you have too many offers, it's not that you have too many offers and you can't have loads of offers. It's that you're not able to sell them well. Because selling one thing is hard enough. Selling 10 things, 20 things, 30 things is difficult for you to do that with such strong messaging that the people on the other end get it. So you might get it, and in your head, in the business, you've got this whole business playbook that makes loads of sense in your head. But to the consumer, it's the consumer that's the issue, right? The consumer can then be like, I have no bloody clue whether if I buy that thing and that thing, why would I buy those? What's the difference? And then what this leads to is customer dissatisfaction. And this is the issue people don't understand. So when people think I've got to be in my bonnet about people having too many offers, the reason I do is because it makes your customer satisfaction really difficult. There is so much nuance that you then have to grapple with because you've got to make sure that your messaging makes complete sense. And it also it makes the flow of your business to become somewhat fragmented because you'll have a core group of people who are really invested in your business and love it, right? And they will buy stuff and they're going to buy it regardless. So that's great. But in terms of, that's a small percentage. In terms of the ecosystem around that and the group of people you have on the sidelines, that's where it becomes difficult. Because people kind of then think, right, well, she was doing this, and now she's doing this, and now she sells that, and then she does that. And I'm not saying that people aren't intelligent enough to be able to use their brain and differentiate between that. But what I'm saying is that marketing, 20 offers, on one hand, we're saying your brand message needs to be cohesive and what you're saying needs to make total sense, and it all needs to be around a certain point. But then on the other hand, I'm sat here saying if you've got 20 offers, it needs to be very clear on why you'd buy X, Y, and Z. That then becomes difficult, and what can happen is the brand just becomes jarred, and it becomes like this kind of sort of catalogue of things, and people just feel like they're looking at a catalogue. That makes conversion harder. So again, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't have 20 offers. Some people have got 100 offers, and it works great for them. I'm just saying you need to be very strategic in your sales strategy. You need to be very good in your marketing, and you need to understand at what point do all of these offers come into the customer journey, and which are public, which aren't, which kind of fit and slot in, and which are like, whoa, no, they're distant and they're for a certain group of people. And, I'm always going to be an advocate for having one incredible offer. I have more than one offer in my business, but I will always fly the flag for, if you want to grow a 7-figure business, 8-figure business, even, 400,000, 500,000 a year, quick. When I say quick, I don't mean overnight, but I mean, if you want to do that in the shortest time possible, over a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, and be really profitable, one offer normally makes the most sense. Potentially one main offer with maybe 2 other offers. But I am always going to sit here and say that will make the most sense. And the thing I always come back to with this, that people sometimes helps them get their heads around, is an agency, right? Most people in an agency, you have one retained offer at one retained thing. There might be 2 price points or 3 price points, but the actual offer is the same. The offer is the same, the messaging is the same, it's just the volume of what they need is different. The reason agency can grow and scale and that model works so well is because of that. It's just laser focus, we're doing that, we're going there, and that's what they're doing. That works, and you can use that model across most business models. I'm not saying you have to have an agency. I'm saying you can use that idea of one offering and one service. If you can get it on a retained model, then great, because that really works, but you don't have to. That can really, it just makes business simple. And so I'm not saying you have to have one offer, but I am saying that if you are someone who struggles with time to market, or you haven't got 10 grand to spend on this huge elaborate funnel, every month that's going to, trigger this thing and that thing, and it's got 200 different points, then like, do you need 20 offers? I'm not convinced. Is there anything wrong with having that? No. If you can sell it and you've got a great business and you're happy, fab. But just be mindful that if you're sat here listening to this and you're like, I'm struggling with sales, I'm struggling with like getting demand for my thing, I honestly think the worst thing you can do is then create like loads of things. You need to get clear on one thing and really sell it really well. And then build it as people are there and as are waiting for things. But in terms of how do I know, I would say if people have no clue and people are really confused, often people will be like, oh yeah, you do this, but you also do that, and maybe you do this. And it's like really kind of unknown. It also can be, if you have too many offers, you can know that by people taking ages to sign. So your customer life cycle, in order for them to actually buy, so the sales process length, that and the sales journey, that can be very long and drawn out. And often if people want to reduce that, a really good way of doing that is to cut out a load of the shit that needs to go, i.e. offers, fluff, messaging that doesn't need to be there, and really streamline it and make it lean. That could be a whole episode and topic in itself, but we will keep it at that. Hopefully that helps you. Number 3, this is a great one to move on to. Should I offer power hours in my business? Oh my goodness, if I had £1 for every kind of person that asked me this, and every sort of conversation I have around this, I would be quite rich. Should you offer power hours? Again, just to explain to anyone who's like, what the hell are you talking about? What the hell is a power hour? This can mean many things to different people. What we're talking about here is selling an hour of your time, basically, right? You can add loads of different bits and pieces into it. You can call it an intensive, which I'd argue is a slightly different thing. But if you just want a power hour, it is simply where someone sells an hour of their time. Someone, the client buys it. There's no prep work beforehand. There's no kind of like doing any work beforehand. It's just you get on a call, you have an hour of someone's time, you can help them. They come and ask questions. Maybe, they bring strategy, they bring whatever, and you are kind of helping them in that hour. The hour ends, they leave, you leave, that's it. Okay? That tends to be what a basic power hour is. Obviously, people have kind of added things in, and then there is something called an intensive, which people have different definitions for. I would argue intensive tends to be longer than, say, like 60 minutes, but it doesn't have to be, and it can involve some of the work beforehand, like, for example, the ones in our business do. Now, should I offer power hours in my business? I have very mixed views on this. This is, again, it depends on your business. I would actually say for the majority of people, well, should I say that? I was going to say the majority of people, I would say no. However, it can be a really good thing to have. I just think people rely too heavily on them, and often it really conflicts with whatever they're trying to sell high ticket. So what do I mean by that? If you have a high ticket offer, which I would argue every business should have, realistically, try to, please. People get stuck into the loop because they see successful people using a kind of model where you can have a power hour and they upsell them in. That works very well. However, most people it doesn't work for because they haven't got the skill set to be able to do that, i.e. they haven't got the ability to share the value and to demonstrate value of why you would buy the high ticket over the lower ticket item. People also struggle because they just see it as like the result is the same outcome from buying each, which is where it all goes wrong. However, if you are trying to sell a high ticket offer, I wouldn't be selling power hours at the same time is what I'm trying to say to you. Unless you are very advanced in business, you have a real clear model with it and it works for you. Like if you're doing it, great. But for the majority of people, if you're like straight out the bat, I wouldn't bother. I'd sell your high ticket thing. That's what you need to be selling. You can sell other things, but the power hour is often really jarring when in terms of a consumer psychology and buying behavior perspective, it doesn't really make sense for people. They have to really shift their buy-in for it to kind of come as like, oh yeah, let's do this, let's buy that. However, do I like power hours? Yes. Do some of my clients use them? Yes. Do I suggest them as strategy for some clients? Yes, 100%. So this definitely depends on your business. I'd say if you have a retained offer in your business. So if you have let's say you're a marketing agency and you've got an offer, a power hour can work. The issue you're going to have though is you need to make sure it's priced well, which I would say 80% of people's power hours are not priced correctly. And what I mean by that is most of the time they're too low and therefore it's never going to work as a kind of conversion issue. So what a lot of people come to me and say is, I've got a power hour service, and the people who come and do the power hour service are completely different to the people who buy the things that they actually want to sell to grow their business, i.e. their retained service, the high ticket service, something that is a reoccurring revenue situation. And so then they come to me and say, well, should I do power hours? Because I feel like I've got this whole random group of people here who do power hours, and then I've got this different group of people here who are doing that. And that's because there's a gap between power hour and who's buying them, and there's lots of work that I can do with you, and I can help you to actually close that gap and to make it so that the people who are buying the power hours are actually the people that you want to buy and sell in terms of the other offerings. But when you have that differentiation, that does become difficult, because some people will then end up doing like 10 power hours a month, and if that's 200 quid, then you've made £2,000. If it's 100 quid, then it's £1,000. If you're charging £500, then that's £5,000, like whatever. Some people think that that's good, some people don't. What I would say is that they inevitably take up your time, and the reason I don't love a power hour is because it's often not reoccurring, it's not passive in any way, because you're getting on that call, and therefore for me those two are just like, it ain't great. I'm not saying don't do them, and I'm not saying they can't work, but I think a lot of people sort of base that on their, like, they start building this business model, and it's like, right, well, you're going to have to go and find people to do that a lot of the time, like find actual people who want to buy it from you, and then where are they going afterwards? The other issue with a power hour is the impact is limited, right? Now, that isn't to say that you can't blow someone's mind in an hour, because you can. Like, I have clients who do a power hour and people come away thinking, whoa, that's just completely changed so much for me. I love it. They shout about it. They're really happy. So a power hour is powerful. That's why it's called power hour. Like, it's a really good, exciting thing to do. However, depending on where your expertise lies, it's going to be limited, or what the end outcome is that they want, that the client needs to overcome and to get to, is limited in an hour. Because I can't come and change someone's life in an hour, right? I can do a lot, but I ain't going to be doing, I can't completely change everything. And so something you need to think about is, does what you do lend itself well to doing an hour's worth of things? And for some people it is. So for some people, it might be like you help people with fitness or nutrition, or there might be something where actually an hour with you is an absolute game changer. It might be that you are an accountant or a bookkeeper, and you can sit with someone for an hour and do a zero training, and it's recorded, and they can that can change so much for them. Or you can sit and help them understand what actually their cash flow or their P&L means, or what their balance sheet is like. Something like that can be game changing for people. What sometimes is more difficult is when people are trying to kind of pack in 6 months worth of knowledge into a 60-minute thing, and the person's like, my head's gonna explode and I can't do this. And everybody could have a power hour that, in whatever they do, that is really meaningful and really amazing. But I'm just suggesting that you need to think about, why does having something longer term make sense? Like, what does that mean for you? If if you're someone who's teaching someone, then they need to go and implement something, then longer term makes sense, because often it's the implementation part that people kind of struggle with or fall apart with. And that's not me saying that you have to do that with everything, but I'm just saying, have a think about, what is the journey that someone will go on and why? The other issue with power hours, in my opinion, is this whole value issue, in terms of devaluing your expertise and also being really accessible. So, again, this is where the pricing bit needs to be really right. If you're doing power hours, but they're expensive in the sense of it's £500, £600, £700, £1,000, £400, I don't know, something around that price point, then obviously, you can argue with a lot of money. People who get on those calls are really serious about what you've got to say. But, if you're charging £50 or a £99, but then you're trying to sell a 10 grand offer, I find it very jarring. And it makes you very accessible when someone can click on a link, find all these times that you're available in the next day, 24 hours, 48 hours, and it's like, oh, you've got loads of time. Now, some people love that, and that's great. If that's you, then go for it. But I think that then makes your brand, it depends what your brand vibe is and what you want your brand to be, but it becomes it just becomes very jarring for people, because one thing they're seeing this and the other thing you're saying this and your messaging you're saying something else. And so I think you need to be really aware of, what does your operations actually look like? Like, what does it mean for other people in how you operate? Because that's what it comes down to. It's a decision on how are you operating, and how does like how do you do your day to day, and your process of a power hour and how you deliver that then comes into massively, your operations and what that looks like. So those are my thoughts on power hours, but they can be amazing. Also, if you need a cash injection in your business, I think a power hour is great, right? If you shit's hit the fan and you're like, God, I need some money, or something's happened, or, there's been something where you're like, I need it, then, do some power hours, great. I just would be very careful, because people do that as a strategy and then it hangs on for like 6 months to a year. Or people then do power hours and then instead of working on the thing that's actually gone wrong or working on fixing what's actually happened, they're then sat doing power hours, which doesn't make sense to me. So be careful, right? You've got to be intentional. You've got to, like, things have to be really, really bad for me to say to someone, go and do a power hour. Like, I'm talking like desperate times. I won't just say, oh yeah, go and do a power hour. When I say that, I mean if something's gone wrong. I might suggest to other people do a power hour because it's part of their strategy and part of their business model and it makes sense. That's a separate conversation. I'm talking about if shit's hit the fan and you're like loads of things have gone wrong, it's still not my first port of call to be like, go and start doing loads of power hours, because that's not what I suggest. Question number 4 is, what should I sell, or what should I be selling for Black Friday this year? What a good question. So as I mentioned at the start of the episode, Black Friday is coming up. It is in Q4. It's November. When is it? Is it the 25th or 26th? Oh, I don't know. I don't have it to date. Don't hold me on that. I'm probably wrong. But it's one of the last Fridays in November. And it'll be here before we know it. And people are often like, right, well, what am I doing? Because I tell people, get prepared for Black Friday now. You need to be organised. Obviously, if you're a product-based business, you've probably been organised for ages and ages and ages, and you might be even working on next 2024 Black Friday. But for service-based people, you can normally wait a bit and you can kind of decide what you're doing. What should you sell for Black Friday? I mean, I've done workshops on this before. There's so much to talk about Black Friday. I have a lot to say on Black Friday. I have like whole strategies. I build strategies for people. Black Friday is a real time and a moment for businesses to do really well. Whether you agree with it or not, I should also bring into this Small Business Saturday, because some of the people I work with, they don't do Black Friday, but they do the Small Business Saturday. Other people just view it as Q4 as a whole thing rather than Black Friday if they're not kind of into that as a concept. It's totally cool. I'm just going to say Black Friday, but you can interpret that as, like insert any other thing that you want to call it and keywords that kind of fit for you. What should you be selling? I mean, you can sell anything and everything. I think this year is going to be really interesting to see what happens with Black Friday. I think it's going to be really good. I know there's a lot of speculation, especially in the UK, about, is it over? Is it going to work? Is it going to be any good? I honestly think it'll do really well. I also think pre-Black Friday is going to do really well. So I think, from October to the point of getting to Black Friday, I think that's now become the consumer buying thing. Obviously, you're always going to have your late Christmas shoppers, but I really, really see, last year we saw a trend in that, and the year before, I think, yes. And this year, I believe that, that's really going to happen to the point where on Black Friday, it's like, what's everyone got left to sell? Because there was times last year, certain businesses where it felt like they'd gotten to Black Friday and their Black Friday strategy had gone out the window because they'd already sold before that. One thing I want to say, if you're a product-based business listening to this, please go on TikTok Shop, and you're in the UK or you're in a location where you can get TikTok Shop, please go and just join TikTok Shop. I promise you that will make sense for you this year, and I think you need to get on it and you need to be using it. Aside from that, when it comes to what should you sell, I think bundles do well, personally. I also think what you need to think about with Black Friday is, what do you want the outcome to be? So let's just go back to like more specifically service-based businesses, but it applies for everyone. What do you want the outcome of Black Friday to be? Do you want a cash injection right now? Do you want a cash injection to end the year on? Are you needing to get rid of like stock? Are you needing to change up something in the business? Do you want to get rid of a certain service that you're not offering anymore? Like, what is it that you want? Do you want to launch something and soft launch it sort of thing, like where people can access it in Black Friday and they don't until like March of 2024 otherwise? Get really clear on what do you want it to be, because the joy of Black Friday is it can be whatever you want, and I think that's where people kind of mess up, because they forget that like it's cool, you can do what you want to do. Like anything you fancy, it kind of goes, really, as long as you've got a good market message and there's a whole other strategy behind it as to how to make it work. But in terms of the offer itself, you can do what you want to do. I always get the question around, does high ticket work for Black Friday? And it does. Obviously, low ticket tends to be the most obvious option for a lot of people. High ticket does work on Black Friday. You've just got to be really, really clear on what you're offering. I would give yourself a long runway and a long time afterwards of the day itself, but it does work. In terms of ideas, let me just show, because some of you will be like, I have no clue what what could we even do? Courses can be a decent option. Memberships, if you're going to open your membership or you're going to add something as a bonus. Any kind of program, something that starts in the new year can be good. You can do like one-on-one, one-off services. So it might be like some people will do the power hours that we've just discussed, but they only do them once a year and they're limited. And that helps with this exclusivity piece. It helps with not making them really cheap. It helps with this whole idea of, normally you can't access this, but for Black Friday you can. Like anything around that kind of works. I think, something in the price point from £20 to, I'd say sort of £600 works quite well. As I've said, you can do high ticket. People sell high ticket on Black Friday and they do very well off it. But if you are kind of going for volume and you do sort of want to just have it where it's something really passive, then, see what you've already got. Don't look at making something else. What have you already got that you can actually just sell? A lot of people have assets in their business that are passive things, downloadables, templates, freebies, like those type vibes of like workshops, courses. What are you going to just put out, package together? Can you package 3 together and it's sort of a bundle? Like, think creatively about what have you already got versus making something. You can make something and that's fine, but I just think look at what you've already got rather than making yourself loads of work, because a lot of people throughout the year completely forget to sell the passive stuff and they completely forget to promote it. And so actually Black Friday is a really lovely time for you to be like, woohoo, here, like, yay, we've got all this going on and this is really fun and like we've already got this here. And so you can then create a really good marketing campaign and sell it that way. But in terms of Black Friday, there's not a lot of rules. Most things kind of work. Most things go. It just depends on marketing. It's who can market, right? It's who can market the best. It's who can market. And some won't be the loudest, although you don't have to subscribe to that. You can do really effective pieces of marketing. I would say, though, if you're going to go down the Black Friday route, you need to really give it a good go. The biggest mistake I see is it's not actually the offer, because the offer most of the time for Black Friday is, you can make it whatever you want it to be. It's the issue is that the execution's done very poorly. The marketing's not great. The messaging makes 0 sense, and people just kind of give up and they just half-arse it because it's towards the end of the year. People are normally tired. People have got loads of things going on and they kind of tack it on the end. It's like, yeah, let's just do this and fling it in and see what happens. And that's when it doesn't particularly work, in my opinion. And it's when, take the time now for it to work for you. But also understand where it fits in your business model. Because for us at May James, Black Friday and that time of year is a big time. It's the busiest time of year. It's one of the busiest times of years for deliverance services, but it's also the busiest sales time. Like November is our biggest sales month. And part of that does come down to Black Friday because we have a program that we launch every year. And around that time, it's not necessarily on Black Friday, the day itself. But we know where that fits in our kind of whole market and life cycle. We know where it fits in the business. Like my whole year, or not mine, but the business's whole year is built around certain cornerstones. And the main cornerstone is towards the end of the year, because the end of the year is where it all gets very, very busy, very intense. And I love it because it's my favorite time of year, personally and professionally. But it's like managed to the nth degree, and every year it gets better, and every year we get more efficient, and it becomes better and better, which is really nice and exciting. But understand where it fits. For some people and some of the clients I work with, they don't do it. They don't do anything for it because they don't like it. They don't want to. It doesn't fit for them. It doesn't work with their lifestyle. Like, That's cool. You don't have to do anything. But the more you understand where does this fit in the ecosystem of our business and the way that this business lives and breathes and what our culture is, it makes making decisions like this easier. So when I say, oh, we do Black Friday and really love it, we don't just, but it's very rare for me to create like a random offer and be like, here's our Black Friday offer. Like, it's not really a thing. What does work really well with Black Friday is people integrating things into a life cycle where people are anticipating it. So, for example, for me, we have people in the May James community who are anticipating us launching this program at the end of the year on Black Friday because they know it comes up. And so you can, this is why I talk about building longer term things in your business, this is why I talk about look at 5-year impact, look at 10-year impact, is what is this going to do for your business longer term? How can you build this as an asset that actually sits as a cornerstone for people to understand and to advocate for you? Because there's other people who I send clients to and I will say, look, so-and-so has a sale on Black Friday, buy X thing then, or so-and-so does this on Black Friday and actually it'd probably be useful for you. I might be saying that in March, I might be saying it in June, like I did last week actually. I said it to someone and I was like, oh, so-and-so does this on Black Friday. I don't know them, I don't speak to them, I know who they are, but I might not even have a really solid relationship with them. I don't know their behind-the-scenes marketing plan. It could be that they don't do it, but I understand on a strategic level that they will have that in their business and it comes around every year. That sort of thing's really meaningful. It's really fabulous. People can advocate for you. Your business then becomes easier once this becomes a lot more of a structured thing. And this is why I really recommend that you come and work with someone like me because I can help you actually do this, right? When we're having these conversations, and I talk about business design, business structure, business model, reconfiguration. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about key structural pieces of your business that you might think is like, oh, okay, whatever, yeah, cool. That I'm sat there thinking, no, in 5 years' time, you're going to be like, wow, this becomes so much easier. And so if you're listening to this conversation and what we've been saying, all of these things are about your business model design. Business model design is really, really important. And if you do want to come and work with me, you can come and work with me kind of in a format this year. I do have consultant available. And in my consultant, this is what we work on. So this is what we design. We create specifically for your business. You will have it. You'll be able to use it. You'll be able to run with it. You don't have to work with me for a long period of time for this because we're going to just create solid, business foundations, business strategy, whatever it is that you specifically need. And you can do that via an intensive with me, or you can do that via a day. And we have 2 different day offerings depending on what you need. This wasn't meant to go into a whole sales pitch, but it's just, you can tell I'm really passionate about this. And I'm really passionate because this work goes way beyond just how do I get a cash injection for this year at Black Friday. It goes, for me, when you come and work with me, it's about, right, well, what does that mean for 3 years and 5 years and 10 years? And how do I make your life easier? And what does it mean for the profitability of your business? And how do we make it repeatable, but how do we also predict? How do we provide you with the peace of mind of knowing what's going to happen? And so that all kind of comes into this conversation. Anywho, let's keep going. But if you want to come work with me, come and work with me. It's a fabulous time. We have loads of fun. And, it really helps your business. That's my thoughts on Black Friday. Do what you want with it. Do, have fun. Also, have fun. It's the end of the year when you execute on this. And I think people need to have fun with it and just enjoy it. I think that's when it's the most successful because people are like, yeah, do you know what? This is actually really fun and I'm having a ball. Number 5. Okay, final question. This question hit hard because I have really difficult conversations with people quite often about this, not all the time, but quite often, and it's way more common than most people think. And my approach is different for each person that asks it because it depends on your business. However, let's have a little chat about it. So the question, drum roll please, that is the 5th and final question of this episode is, May, I don't enjoy delivering my best-selling service anymore. What should I do? And what I mean by that is, should I get rid of it? Should I keep it? What do I do? I'll just repeat it again. I don't enjoy delivering my best-selling service anymore. What should I do? Now, if you are in this situation, I just want to say you are okay. I want to give you a hug and be like, it's all going to be okay. Because I know sometimes if you've been in this situation and you're sat in it and maybe this has been going on for 6 months and you've only just kind of acknowledged it, or maybe even 2 years. I've had it before where people are like, I've been sad doing this for 3 years and I don't like it anymore, and this is not this is not working. It's okay. Breathe, chill out. It's all going to be okay. There is then different routes I will go down depending on your business, your model, how much money it brings in, what does your business look like, what are your goals, where are you at? There's whole different avenues I'm going to go to before I start building you a strategy again around something else. But what I would say is you need to decide on if you don't enjoy delivering your best-selling service, ultimately you've got a couple of options. You either get someone else to deliver it in the business, if you can, and you still sell it, or you get rid of it, or you tweak it. Those ultimately tend to really be there are a few other options, but they tend to be the three that kind of are the options. And you have to really decide with yourself what makes sense. So most of the time, I suggest that people try and tweak it and see if they can then enjoy it. Because often people do. This works. So people think, no, I can't do it, mate. I don't want to do it. I'm going to hate it forever. And actually, if they will just ride with me for a month or two and hold out and do what I kind of suggest as a proposed strategy from a consultant perspective and advisory perspective, people then after the time are like, thank you, thanks for not telling me to rip it apart and never look at it again, because actually I really like it now. So there's a lot of tweaking that can go on, and if you have a best-selling service, it's very easy for me to come in and be like, try this, what about this, can we change this? There's a lot of things to do around that. You need to look at your delivery, right? If you hate delivering it, why? We need to understand, why do you hate it? Is it a time thing? Is it because you're not being compensated enough for what you do? Is it because the operations make it really difficult for you because they're not set up correctly and it takes bloody ages? Why is it that you don't like delivering it? Why did you like delivering at one point and you don't anymore? That's where we need to sit and understand what is the issue. Because often the issue is not the offer, the issue is something else in the business. It's a different problem, which is similar to what I was saying before about symptoms. Problems can look like problems, but they're actually symptoms of something else, and we have to dive in between them all, and we get it all fixed and it's all okay. But yeah, you need to decide, okay, what is actually the issue? When it comes to changing it, and you're like, well, I don't want to change it, or I can change it, or I can't change it, then the other question is obviously around who delivers it. And for some businesses, you can get someone else to deliver things. It doesn't have to be you. A lot of people believe that it has to be you, but I'd actually argue it doesn't most of the time. And so there's things that you can do to make that possible. Obviously, the option is always there that you just get rid of it and you evolve it. What I would suggest, though, is if you are going to do that, you need a strategy, of a change management strategy for your audience and also for inside the business, of how you're going to move through it. Do not just randomly be like, right, that's it, we're done, I'm out of here. Ain't going to work. Not a good move. I mean, if you have to, fine. I can still save it. But, ideally, don't just, throw the pan out the window, whatever. I don't know what the saying is. Here we go. Usual dyslexic may not know what the saying is, but don't just throw everything out the window and be like, I'm setting fire to it all, this is gone. You need to have a strategy of how do we move people, because if you don't enjoy delivering service, you don't want to do it anymore, the business really needs to pivot, you need to change, you can 100% do that, and we can get people who are buying that best-selling service to buy the new service, right? It's not as complicated as people think it is, but you do have to be intentional about it, and we do have to create a really seamless way for people to understand why. Why are they moving? And for them to understand how does that fit in their lives, and why is it better, or why does it make more sense? That is my thought process on sort of what should you do. Go through those three options and think kind of, well, what makes the most sense and what feels kind of the most appealing for where you're at right now. I'd also say potentially you need to look at who's buying it, because a lot of the time the issue is who's buying it, not the actual service. So the service might be fine, the delivery might be fine, your operations might be all right. It might be that it's the person actually buying the service that's wrong, and you need to shift who you're marketing to, or shift what it is that you're saying that the reason that is someone's buying, and the reason that a certain group of people aren't buying, because that might be what the issue is, and it might not be the offer. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I have really enjoyed spending time with you. I've really enjoyed diving into those 5 questions. What a juicy kind of useful, I hope, set of questions for our sales and offer development Q&A. If you have other questions related to this, or you have different questions, send them over to me. You can send them on Instagram. It's usually the easiest option, @may.james_, and I will add them to the list of Q&A questions because we have many of them, and then we just kind of group them together every now and again for you, because I know you like a Q&A episode. So feel free to pop a question to me if you would like to, and it might take me a little while to get to it, but we will. And thank you for listening today, and I will see you next week in another episode. Bye!